city nice. You know the soldiers, I wanna live in your house, your house. If you're the prodigal son, my brother.
They started in the most racist neighborhood in Britain.
Some crazy dude just forever told us, go back home to your country, go back to where you come from.
Got their name from a racehorse.
A lot of people is not familiar with the name Steel Pulse, but it's actually deriving from a racehorse.
A racehorse?
That's right.
It's all about having a very hard beat at the time. You know, something that was tough and energetic. And we just went through so many different names, and Steel Pulse fit the bill.
The Jamaican community told them British reggae would never be good enough.
Because you're from Britain, the reggae music that you're producing was not good enough compared to that what was in Jamaica.
Bob Marley himself questioned their band name. They couldn't get played on British radio.
Trying to convince them back in the day that reggae music can be established in England also.
The Caribbean diaspora rejected them, so they did something nobody expected. They turned to punk rock. The white audience embraced them first. Then in July of 1978, Bob Marley called. He wanted them on tour, and that changed everything. 50 years later, they're still here, still fighting, still making the hardest reggae Britain ever produced. And the Jamaican community, they finally came around.
I'm staying within 5 minutes without someone saying, Steel Pulse. You know, and it's like, it becomes, wow, where can I go without anybody recognizing me?
This is the story of the band that proved reggae could be born anywhere. How does someone grow up in the most racist neighborhood in 1960s Britain, get inspired by the Black Panthers and Muhammad Ali, start a reggae band named after a racehorse, get rejected by their own Caribbean community, break through by opening for punk rock bands, tour with Bob Marley, and 50 years later, still be making the hardest conscious reggae music on the planet? Steel Pulse. Formed in 1975 in Handsworth, Birmingham, United Kingdom. David Hines on lead vocals and guitar. The band that proved British reggae could stand next to anything coming out of Jamaica. Handsworth, Birmingham, 1975. One of the most notorious Black communities in Britain. And that's not a compliment. It was rough, racist, dangerous. The kind of place where if your ball went over the fence into the wrong neighbor's yard, you'd never see it again because that neighbor would cut it up, stab it, destroy it, and tell you to go back to where you came from. David Hines sat down with I Never Knew TV and revealed what it was like growing up in that environment. No Blacks, no Irish. Signs everywhere. This was the 1960s and early 1970s, the first generation of Blacks born in the UK from the Windrush generation, and they were under attack. Skinheads wearing Levi's jeans, checkered shirts, hair cropped short, Dr. Martens boots, going around beating up minorities, especially Blacks and Asians.
I had brothers and sisters that came over one by one in the 60s that experienced racism in their workforce.
But something strange happened. The skinheads loved ska music. Loved it so much, they actually eased up on beating Black people. Started a new term, Paki bashing, which meant they'd only beat up Pakistani people now. That was the climate David Hines grew up in.
The ska music was, funny enough, admired, loved by the skinheads who were initially a racist institution.
And then David Hines started noticing something else. Something is happening across the ocean in America. John F. Kennedy assassinated. That was the first moment David realized something was wrong with the world. Then Malcolm X got assassinated. David's father kept saying, I knew it. I knew they'd get him. Then Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy. And David thought, is America just a place that kills people? But the real awakening came during the 1968 Mexico Olympics.
Two African Americans on the podium,
raising their fists in the air. Black power salutes. And David and his friends went, did you see that?
Mexico Olympics took place and we saw these three guys on a podium and these two Black African Americans raising their fists in the air. And it's like, we're going, what the?
Then Muhammad Ali came along, saying, we're not going to keep our chins on our chest anymore. We're proud proud. And Muhammad Ali gave young black kids in Britain something they'd never had before: pride.
And Muhammad Ali was a major contribution to us looking up in the United Kingdom.
David Hines and his friends started clinging to what was happening in America. They started reading books they couldn't get in the UK, but were available in America. Malcolm X's autobiography, George Jackson's letters, Blood in My Eye, Walter Rodney's Groundings with My Brothers.
You know, the Angela Davis with George Jackson and all these kind of things springing up. And we decided to become politically conscious.
And then reggae music started coming through. Burning Spear talking about Marcus Garvey, connecting them to Africa, and everything clicked.
And then the reggae music was also informative in the dance halls with Burning Spear in particular, talking about Marcus Garvey and getting us connected to Africa.
David Hines realized slavery wasn't just something that happened a long time ago. It happened to his great-great-great-grandfather. It was personal, and reggae music was the vehicle to talk about it.
So I'm saying, so we started to read, and as I mentioned tonight, there were a lot of books that was happening that we could not ascertain in the United Kingdom.
In 1975, David Hines and his friends decided to form a band. They needed a name, and their bass player had an idea. He was the type who frequented betting shops, backing horses, and there was this racehorse, Steel Pulse. David Hines sat down with iJam Radio and explained how the band got its name. The bass player thought it connected to what they wanted to do: hard music with a strong pulse, the hardest beat, like steel, with a heartbeat pulse, and it fit. But the name caused problems. Some people thought they were a steel pan band. Others thought of heavy metal. And when Bob Marley first heard the name, he said, "Steel Pulse? What kind of name is that?" But they kept it, and they started making music. In 1978, Steel Pulse released their debut album, Handsworth Revolution, and it was unlike anything Britain had heard before. The album opened with Ku Klux Klan, and Steel Pulse didn't just sing about the Klan, they dressed up as them on stage. David Hines and band members would battle with members dressed in full KKK outfits, showing the antagonism, making it visual, making it impossible to ignore. David Hines explained to Kahunyo Kawahi where that theatrical approach came from.
And battling with them, showing that there's this antagonism going on. And it was our way of trying to express ourselves according to which song we were delivering.
They dressed according to the songs they were delivering, made it choreographed, it made it powerful. But over time, certain songs and certain styles played out. They moved on to other pressing issues. One of those pressing issues was soldiers, based on a movie called Soldier Blue, starring Candice Bergen, about American cavalry massacring thousands of Native Americans.
Got a prayer, Soldier Blue? A nice poem?
David Hines watched that movie and reimagined it, saw the American cavalry as the British invading Africa, saw the Native Americans as Africans being slaughtered. The Zulus were massacred by the British in the late 1800s, and he flipped the script, made it about colonialism, about British imperialism, about what was done to his ancestors. But here's the problem Steel Pulse faced. They were making revolutionary reggae in Britain, and the Caribbean community in Britain didn't think British reggae could be any good. Because Steel Pulse was a British black reggae band, there was a stigma. The Caribbean community thought their reggae wasn't good enough compared to what was coming out of Jamaica. So even though Steel Pulse played small clubs in black communities, that's not how they broke through. They broke through because of punk rock. The white punk rock audience embraced Steel Pulse, invited them as opening acts for major punk rock bands, and that's how their message got out, through white audiences, not black ones. The irony was thick.
Where we were invited as supporting acts for major punk rock acts that were happening at that time. And that's how our message got on board.
But reggae music itself was starting to represent something: racial harmony. Bob Marley was singing his songs, Steel Pulse was singing theirs, Third World was singing theirs, and people were realizing reggae represented unity.
They were realizing that reggae music was starting to represent unity and racial harmony. So I think that's what brought them on board in the first place.
The white community loved Bob Marley so much he became an icon, but then something strange happened. The black community stopped embracing him as much. They preferred Gregory Isaacs, Dennis Brown, Black Uhuru, artists who weren't crossing over to white audiences. It was a conundrum for David Hines.
Such an icon because of the white community across the planet. He was no longer embraced by the black community.
Then, in July of 1978, everything changed. Bob Marley called, wanted Steel Pulse on tour, a few dates across Europe. David Hines sat down with I Never Knew TV and revealed what that tour meant.
Touring with Marley was, I honestly think that if we'd never done that Marley tour for those few dates that we did in Europe, I don't think Still Pulse would be the band you know it to be today.
If Still Pulse had never done that Marley tour, David doesn't think they'd be the band they are today. They saw someone who grafted, who took every show like it was his last show. They saw professionalism. They saw how tight his band was, how every night was important to him. And the biggest lesson, don't take the audience for granted.
We saw the professionalism in how he handled the audience. We saw how tight his band was and how every night was important to him.
That changed Still Pulse forever. Throughout the late 1970s and 1980s, Still Pulse kept releasing albums. Tribute to the Martyrs in 1979, Caught You in 1980, True Democracy in 1982, Conscious Reggae, Political Reggae, Revolutionary Reggae, and they were relentless. But they faced another challenge, getting played on British national radio. The BBC wouldn't touch them. Too political, too controversial, too black. Two main challenges, convincing the Caribbean community that reggae could be established in England, and getting reggae played on national radio. Both seemed impossible, but Still Pulse kept pushing. In 1982, Still Pulse made their first trip to Africa, Nigeria.
It wasn't as successful as how we wanted it to be, but what was successful was us bonding with the African people.
It wasn't as successful as they wanted business-wise, promoter issues, setbacks, but what was successful was bonding with African people. It was electrifying. After that came Ivory Coast, Senegal, Ghana. David Hines made personal visits to Gambia, transited through Kenya, and everywhere they went, Africans embraced them. Because Still Pulse's mission was always clear, to enlighten the diaspora, especially African people. They realized Africa had been exploited for centuries. Even after independence, the exploitation continued. Western countries, dictatorships, tribalism, and Still Pulse made music about it.
When it comes to us and the African people, we started through the situation that we've experienced in Africa.
David Hines sat down with Kuhunya Kuwahi and had a message for African leaders.
What Africa needs to do is abandon tribalism and also the status between the rich and the poor and sort of amalgamate on a different level.
Abandon tribalism, bridge the gap between rich and poor, support the organization of African unity, make Africa competitive in the world, stop being in power for 30 years, it backfires. That was David's message. And David's signature look became unmistakable. His hair, spiky dreads pointing in every direction like a crown. Over 30 years, he's had that hair. It's his fingerprint, his template. It shaped itself based on the hats he wore, and it became his identity. Part of him whether he was on stage or not.
My hair type and also the kind of hat I was wearing at the time, which sort of worked its way, my dreads worked their way into the shape of the hat. And then initially
in 1986, Still Pulse released Babylon the Bandit, then A Stay of Emergency in 1988, Victims in 1991, album after album, decade after decade, never compromising, never softening the message. And in 1986, Still Pulse did something no British reggae band had done before. They won a Grammy, Best Reggae Album for Babylon the Bandit. British reggae had arrived. And the Caribbean community that once rejected them, they finally came around. Now in 2025, Still Pulse is celebrating their 50th anniversary. 50 years since 1975 and Handsworth, Birmingham, and David Hines sat down with iJam Radio and revealed something about what keeps them going. They're still fighting oppression in all its forms. Racism, social injustice, colonialism. Those things are still happening, so they feel compelled to address it. And when fans come to shows bringing their children and their children's children, that's when Still Pulse knows it's worthwhile. 50 years, named after a racehorse, rejected by Jamaica, embraced by punk rock, changed by Bob Marley, conquered the world, and still making the hardest conscious reggae on the planet.